Sweet Pea Chef. Welcome back. Today we are going to be doing a super exciting 4-ingredient tortilla recipe, and I cannot wait to share with you just how delicious these are, because tortillas are a real biggie in our house. We use them for tacos and wraps and burritos and just all sorts of goods. So we needed to have a healthy tortilla. And you know, I shared my sweet potato tortillas and my spinach tortillas before, and those are great tortilla recipes. But sometimes you just want that like flour, chewy, like just delicious flour tortilla flavor. And you can get that with a cassava flour tortilla, which is really, really awesome. Plus, these cassava flour tortillas are clean eating, they're paleo, they're gluten-free, they're nut-free, and like I said, they're just 4 ingredients, so they're very simple to make. So let's get started. Before I forget, make sure that you subscribe to this channel so you never miss my new weekly recipe videos, because I share amazing, tasty recipes that are healthy, like 4-ingredient cassava flour tortillas, so you know you want to subscribe. All right, so cassava flour tortillas are sounding pretty amazing, am I right? Except, what the heck is cassava flour? I'm so glad you asked, because I want to tell you a little bit about cassava. So cassava is a root that comes from South America. It has kind of a nutty flavor, it's a starchy root, and it's really high in a lot of nutrients, so it makes it really awesome as an ingredient. So the way that we turn cassava roots into cassava flour is you basically peel it, you break it down, and you cook it, and that becomes the cassava flour. Part of that process is actually something that creates tapioca, which is really cool. However, a lot of people think that tapioca flour is the same as cassava flour, and they are not the same. In fact, tapioca flour is actually a starch that is extracted from the process of making a cassava root into cassava flour. So they are not the same thing. Also, if you just happen to be looking for a cassava root at the grocery store, not sure why you would be, because you're probably not breaking it down and making your own flour. But it's also referred to as a yucca plant, even though it's not actually a yucca plant. A lot of people think they're the same thing. And so if you're at the grocery store, if you see a yucca plant, it's probably a cassava root. So I'm talking about how cassava flour is kind of like a miracle flour. That's because it is grain-free, it's nut-free, it's gluten-free. So anyone trying to avoid any one of those 3 types of things is gonna be able to enjoy their flour tortillas and not get sick, which is really cool. And another really cool thing about cassava flour is that it behaves very similarly to all-purpose flour. So any recipe that you have that calls for all-purpose flour, just use a 1-to-1 ratio replacement, and you can use your cassava flour, and that'll make it gluten-free, paleo, grain-free, nut-free, all that stuff, and it's really awesome. It is not root-free, however, in case you're on a root-free diet, which maybe that exists, I don't know. So that means you can also turn cassava flour into like muffins and cookies and cakes and all sorts of those tasty baked goods. And if you're sitting there and wanting to just scream at your screen saying, "No, Lacey, cassava flour is poisonous, don't eat that," you are partially correct, because the cassava root does contain some cyanide components, but the process of breaking down the cassava root into cassava flour completely removes all of those toxins, so that is not unsafe. So your tortillas are totally safe to consume. Don't worry, they're not death tortillas or anything, and you will not get sick. So I said these tortillas are simple and just 4 ingredients, and those 4 ingredients are cassava flour, duh, sea salt, melted coconut oil, and some warm water. If you don't want to use coconut oil for whatever reason, you can always replace it with like avocado oil or olive oil or whatever oil you prefer. In a large bowl, we're going to combine our cassava flour with our sea salt and then whisk that until it's really combined. Then we're going to add in our melted coconut oil and our warm water and stir that together. You'll notice as you're stirring that it starts to become a little crumbly and the liquid gets absorbed, and it might start to look a little dry. That's the point when you're going to want to start using your hands and kind of knead it into a ball of dough. If you find that it just is so crumbly and you can't get it to stick to itself when you press it together, you can add in a little bit more melted coconut oil or warm water. If you're finding that it's just kind of sticking to your fingers and you can't get it off of your hands, then you can add in a little bit of extra cassava flour and then knead it all together again. Once you have the dough in a nice ball and it's kind of sticking to itself and it's looking good, you can transfer that over to a flat, dry, and clean surface. And then you're going to kind of form it into a log. As you're rolling it out, you're gonna need to kind of squeeze it together and kind of form it into the log. It's not gonna really do it as easily as you might expect like a regular flour to do it, but just kind of push it together and squeeze it with your hands and then get it nice and even and symmetrical. Then we're gonna divide it into 6 equal portions. And you can divide it using a knife, a kitchen scraper, some dental floss that's not mint flavored, anything to just kind of get it evenly divided. I'm dividing it into 6 pieces today because we're gonna be turning them into taco-sized tortillas. If you wanted to make it into like a fajita size or a burrito size tortilla, you can actually just, divide it into like 4 pieces instead of 6 pieces. So you can kind of vary how big your tortilla is gonna be by how many pieces you divide your dough into. So I'm gonna show you how to turn this into a flattened tortilla 2 different ways, depending on what's easiest for you or what you have available. The first way is gonna be using a rolling pin, and the second way is gonna be using a tortilla press. So the rolling pin is very simple. All you need to do is use a couple pieces of parchment paper or wax paper and a rolling pin and a flat surface. And so go ahead and set your dough ball flat onto your parchment paper and then put the other sheet over it. And then you just roll it out into an even circle. You might have to turn the paper a little bit to kind of get it as even as possible. It's not gonna be perfectly even and round, but it'll be pretty close to that size and that shape for a tortilla. If you have a tortilla press, which they are super awesome, and you're gonna see why in just a second, we are gonna be using a very similar style. We're gonna put a sheet of square cut parchment paper down onto our tortilla press, then put your dough ball onto that, then put another sheet of our parchment paper over that ball. Then we're gonna close our tortilla press and push it down as hard as we can. The tortilla press is made to basically press your tortilla into a perfect circle, and it's gonna be even and really perfect. So that's kind of why people like tortilla presses, is because it's a perfect circle. So you can kind of tell the difference between our tortilla rolled with a rolling pin and our tortilla pressed with our tortilla press. Either way, it makes a delicious tortilla. It just depends on how you want it to look. If you're interested in getting a tortilla press for yourself, I have a link for you right here and in the description below, and they're pretty awesome. And they're really cheap, so it's not a big deal to have on hand. While you're repeating these steps with the remainder of the dough balls, you can go ahead and just store your pressed tortillas fit in between parchment paper sheets so that they don't stick to each other and then get all stuck, and then you have to do it all over again. Also, I should mention that this recipe easily can be doubled or tripled or quadrupled depending on how many tortillas you want to make. If you want to make all the cassava flour tortillas ever, you can just keep on going. So now it's time to cook our tortillas. This is super exciting. So heat our skillet or griddle over medium-high heat. No need to add any oil because our tortillas already have that coconut oil in them. And then once you have it nice and hot, we're gonna place 1 tortilla onto our skillet. And what we're looking for here is basically, you'll notice that bubbles start to appear all the way around the tortilla, and that you'll start to see a little bit of steam start to come up around the edges. It'll take about 1 to 2 minutes. The hotter the skillet, the quicker the tortilla is made. Then once you see that, just flip it on over and cook for another 30 seconds to a minute, and you have yourself a delicious cassava flour tortilla ready to eat. Then remove it from the heat and place into a warm kitchen towel where you can have all of your tortillas stacked together as you cook them. The heat from the tortillas will kind of keep everything nice and soft and pliable in the towel, which is really cool. You can use these tortillas for quesadillas, for burritos, to just have a tasty tortilla along with some soup. My new goal is to turn these cassava flour tortillas into tortilla chips or taquitos, or both, using my new air fryer, but that is for another day. To store your tortillas, you can place them between layers of parchment paper, and you can put them in a resealable bag. I have these brand new eco-friendly reusable sealable bags, which are super awesome. I can link to them if you want, and I can just store them either on the counter or on the fridge, and they last like all week. I just grab it ready to go. You can also freeze them this exact same way. Just make sure that you use parchment paper in between the tortillas so they don't stick together. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you love these 4-ingredient cassava flour tortillas. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and to check out my tortillas playlist for a bunch of other ways to make tortillas, because yes, that's right, I love tortillas so much, I made a playlist about them. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.